Okay, let's talk about plant-based diets. I mean, they're everywhere, right? But trying to figure out what's actually true, it feels like you're just swimming through this ocean of crazy conflicting headlines. It's enough to make your head spin. So you know what? Today, we're going to cut right through all that noise and just look at the evidence. So the first big question is always about us, isn't it? We're told to eat our veggies, but does going fully plant-based mean it's automatically the best thing for our personal health? Or maybe the biggest benefit isn't even about our own bodies. For a lot of people, the environmental angle is a huge driver. So is it really better for the planet? And then there's the big one, soy. Is it good for you? Is it bad for you? Is it going to mess with you? We are absolutely going to get to the bottom of that whole controversy, and we're going to do it by looking at the actual research. So yeah, let's just set all those crazy headlines aside for a minute and really look at what the evidence says. We're going to follow the data, not the drama. First up, let's tackle that big picture question. What is the real environmental footprint of our food choices? And we're going to zero in on one of the most common swaps people make, milk. All right, take a look at this. The difference here is, well, it's pretty staggering. This data isn't just from some random study either. It's from a huge 2018 meta-analysis. That's basically where scientists pulled together a ton of different studies to get the clearest possible picture. And what they found? When it comes to greenhouse gas emissions for every liter of milk, cow's milk is just in a completely different league. It's not even a close race. To put a hard number on it, dairy milk pumps out around 3 times the greenhouse gas emissions of any of the main plant-based options. 3 times! And emissions are just part of the story. Look at the land use. It takes about 10 times more land to produce a single liter of cow's milk than it does for the plant-based alternatives. But the water usage, wow, that's even more dramatic. You're looking at up to 20 times more fresh water to produce dairy milk compared to soy or oat milk. So on every single key environmental metric, it's not even close. Okay, but hold on. There's always a counter-argument, right? We've all heard this one. Sure, but isn't the huge demand for soy what's destroying the Amazon rainforest? And you know what? That's a totally fair question. We need to look at it. So this chart, it tells a really surprising story. You see that massive slice? Over 75% of all the soy grown in the world. It's not for your tofu or soy milk. Nope, it's grown to feed livestock. Cows, pigs, chickens. So that whole argument about soy lattes destroying the rainforest, well, it turns out the real pressure on the land from soy is actually coming from the global demand for meat and dairy. All right, so the environmental case seems pretty clear-cut. But what about our health? That brings us to our next big topic, the great supplement debate. Is a diet that needs supplements somehow unnatural or not good enough? This quote from the Vegan Society really hits the nail on the head. There's this weird fear, sometimes even within the vegan community, that if you admit you need a supplement, you're admitting your diet has failed. But as they point out, thinking that way can actually be pretty dangerous. And here is a major reality check. This idea that only vegans have to worry about supplements, it's just flat out wrong. I mean, look at this. Major public health bodies, like the NHS in the UK, recommend vitamin D supplements for the entire population in the winter, no matter what you eat. That's just because there isn't enough sunlight. Now, vitamin B12 is the really crucial one for this conversation. It's made by tiny microorganisms in soil and water. Animals get it from grubbing around in their environment, but it's not really found in plants. So yes, if you're on a fully plant-based diet, getting B12 from either a supplement or fortified foods is non-negotiable. But here's the good news. It's incredibly easy to find. Most plant milks, a lot of cereals, they're already fortified with it. Okay, it's time for our final section. Let's unpack the biggest, most persistent, and honestly, most confusing myth of them all. The idea that eating soy is going to completely wreak havoc on your hormones. Okay, so this entire massive controversy, it pretty much boils down to one single word, isoflavones. These are just naturally occurring compounds in soy. But here's the kicker. Their chemical structure looks kind of similar to the hormone estrogen, and that little similarity is what kicked off this whole storm of concern. But here's the thing, right? Similar isn't the same as identical. So what does the actual science, the studies on actual humans, have to say about it? Let's see what the big health organizations say. Way back in 1999, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, reviewed all the evidence and gave soy a clean bill of health. What's wild is that most of the scary stuff you still hear today was already considered and addressed by the FDA decades ago. And this isn't just an American thing. In 2015, Europe's version, the European Food Safety Authority, did its own deep dive. Their conclusion? The exact same. No evidence of harm to key parts of the body that are sensitive to hormones. But what about the C word, cancer? That's the biggest fear for so many people. Well, the American Cancer Society looked at this exact question, and their conclusion is pretty direct. Soy foods are safe to eat, even for breast cancer patients. So here's the bottom line. When scientists take all of the individual human studies and combine them into these massive, powerful meta-analyses, the conclusion becomes crystal clear. Eating soy foods just does not cause any meaningful negative changes to reproductive hormones. Not in men and not in women. Phew, we have covered a ton of ground, haven't we? From the whole planet down to our own bodies. So after looking at all that evidence, what's the big takeaway here? It's really this. The loudest, scariest, and most common arguments you hear against plant-based diets, they just don't hold up when you really dig into the science. The evidence on the environment points the other way, the supplement issue isn't some unique deal breaker, and those fears about soy just aren't backed up by the research on humans. And that leaves us with one last big question. Look, this whole thing isn't about me telling you what to eat. Not at all. It's just about looking at the data together. And when the data is this clear, this consistent across the board, you kind of have to wonder, right? Why is the noise so incredibly loud? Why is there so much confusion out there to begin with? Something to think about.